know existed.
So when's the last time you checked on the title to your home? Find out if you're already a victim at HomeTitleLock.com.
I love cooking with Analon X. It's so much fun. I love the frying and sizzling sounds on the SearTech surface. And then just flipping to reveal the perfect sear is so satisfying. When you pour oil in the pan, it stays directly in the center. I was so shocked at how easy it was to clean Analon X. Everything just wipes right off. After using Analon X, I won't be going back to my old cookware.
Leland Vittert takes on Liberation Day.
Liberation Day is upon us 2 days from now. Tomorrow's April Fool's. Don't forget that, Chris. Welcome to the program on this Monday, week 11 of the second Trump administration. Will undoubtedly be the most consequential so far, and we have a calendar to show you why. Today, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ both had their worst months since 2022. Tomorrow, elections in Florida and Wisconsin will serve as litmus tests for the Trump agenda. Wednesday, as Chris pointed out, is Liberation Day, when Trump promises tariffs on virtually every country in the world and thus price increases on many of the things we buy here at home. On Thursday, foreign leaders will meet at NATO to discuss the ongoing war in Ukraine. Trump is privately furious at Russian President Vladimir Putin's delaying tactics. Ceasefire not working out. Friday, we'll see the monthly job report, which will directly reflect Elon Musk's downsizing efforts. Jobs reports can also influence the stock market. All of these stories could very well lead to bad headlines for the president. Not to mention Signalgate, which the media does not want to go away. But Donald Trump has a superpower, that when things aren't going his way, Trump is able to change the news cycle to something else. Every other president, when things aren't going their way, hides. Donald Trump floods the zone. He did that today, altering the seating chart in the White House press briefing room, and the media melted down. He kind of sort of suggested, joked that he would run for a third term 3 years and 9 months from now. Oh my God, it was a constitutional crisis. It's been going on for days now. Then there's this.
I think TikTok is good. I used it I was a great TikTok guy. Well, I love Tiger, and I love Vanessa, and they had a great relationship. I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. They talk about Bernie Sanders gets 2,000 or 3,000 people. Everyone said, these crowds, I get 107,000 people in New Jersey. Somebody said that about me the other day. They said, who doesn't know me very well, they said, you're such a kind person. And I said, say that again. They said, you're a kind person. I said, I've never heard that before.
Trump is an expert at changing the conversation. And on most of those points that he brought up, Trump wins. He's also winning on the border, remaking the military, no boys and girls sports. He's winning, which makes his big push for tariffs this week completely perplexing. The president and his closest advisors say tariffs are tax cuts. We have to tell the truth here. They are not tax cuts. They are taxes paid by the consumers. Prices for everything we buy that have tariffs on them will go up. It's that simple. And that's why so many Republicans are sounding the alarm.
I hope that the president will reconsider.
You have to think about the economic impacts through inflation.
If this starts causing inflation, we're going to have to recalibrate.
Smoot-Hawley was not a particularly successful round of tariffs that helped spark the depression. So I share the market's concern.
It helped spark the depression. That's what Republicans, all of those major supporters of the president, are saying. But for some reason, the administration just keeps saying tariffs are going to make us all rich.
And I think it's going to be something that's going to bring a lot of wealth back to our country, tremendous wealth back to our country, actually. And other countries are understanding it because they've been ripping us for 50 years.
Let's take the tariffs themselves. We're going to raise $100 billion in auto tariffs alone.
That's largely going to be paid by the American consumer. So Trump and his top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, they can make an argument that tariffs are worth it. Short-term pain for long-term gain. But saying prices won't rise just isn't true. Prices are going to go up. And when they do, it will not work well for the administration. Just ask Joe Biden. Inflation and rising prices killed his presidency. And if you don't believe me, just consider Ronald Reagan's warning about tariffs, April 25th, 1987.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying.
Trump is betting big on tariffs, and it very well might pay off. We've done a couple of segments about how it could. But right now, it's a huge risk. And it's a risk Donald Trump doesn't have to take. He's winning. And as usual, the biggest threat to Trump's agenda is himself. We begin tonight with Bill O'Reilly, host of the No Spin News, BillO'Reilly.com, author of the coming book, Confronting Evil, Assessing the Worst of the Worst. Mr. O'Reilly, always good to see you. Why is he taking this enormous risk with the economy when he doesn't have to?
Because it's exciting. He's an adrenaline junkie. So I'm harking back to my book, The United States of Trump, best book ever written on the man. And he gets bored easily. So this has been in his mind for decades, that why should the most powerful nation on earth and the most generous nation on earth get screwed by Liechtenstein and by Austria and by Cambodia? All right, why? Let's level the economics so that we have a fair chance to sell our products abroad. It's as simple as that.
No, it's a very good point.
That's right. But he's running an enormous risk, far more than people know. Because this time next year, April Fool's Day, 2026, if the economy is wobbly and prices have not come down substantially, Democrats will win the midterms. And that's it for Donald Trump's presidency, right there. So he's got 12 months. The press is going to spin everything that happens economically negative. Everything. Mm-hmm. Not NewsNation, which I'm happy that people are finding now, because you guys try to do a fair job. But ABC, NBC, CBS, all the cables outside of Fox and Newsmax, they'll spin everything negatively. So people will get the perception. The economy's bad. My family's in trouble. What Trump hopes is that he'll be able to make these deals on paper quickly and therefore have to take the tariffs off, which he will. All right, he's nimble. He'll do that. Right. And then he'll wave the paper, look at the deal I got.
Right. Trump always declares victory. He always wins. He always says he wins. But I get the feeling
he hopes is going to happen.
All right, a couple things here. Number one, people don't need to be told how the economy is. They feel it, right? And it feels to me, and you can say I'm wrong, you normally do, but Trump boxed himself in here. He thought he was going to get some more deals. He's getting to April 2nd. He has built this thing up that this is going to be massive tariffs, and he's going to make this huge thing. So either he has to come off as weak by not imposing the tariffs, or he has to, as you say, really risk crashing the economy. And economically speaking, this is a little bit like how Donald Trump or how Joe Biden kept saying, no, the economy's great. The unemployment numbers are low. Inflation's coming down, on and on and on. But people felt like prices were too high. It doesn't matter what the media says about the economy. They said it was great under Biden. American people didn't believe it. Doesn't matter what happens under Trump. The American people know how they feel.
Somewhat. People don't understand tariffs, and I'm not being supercilious about it, word of the day. They don't. You got to go to college, take a macroeconomics course. What will happen is this. If you do not buy foreign cars or Chinese T-shirts, then you'll pay a little bit more because some companies in the USA will raise their prices. Trump has warned them, but he can't stop it. So you pay a little bit more. If you're hell-bent on buying a Mercedes, you'll pay a lot more. Yeah. I'm not buying a Mercedes. I'm boycotting them because of Hitler. That's how far back I go with Mercedes.
You got a good memory. But have you ever seen a president go against most of his own party, most of the opposition party? Hold on. Every
Never
expert
happens.
in the field, go against absolutely everybody, take this huge economic risk. Reagan took a huge risk on the Cold War and he won because he said, I'm going to flip the dynamics. But on an economic issue, have a president take such an enormous risk and it work out?
He believes that he can, through sheer will, make this happen.
You seem skeptical.
And he may be able to. He's not a timid guy. Everybody knows that. He doesn't play it safe. He's never played it safe, and he's won twice. So he's going to, but I think in this regard, if you see the unemployment numbers go up dramatically, if you see the stock market, that's a key for Trump. He locks in on that stock market. If it has another bad quarter, you're going to see changes. All right, you will. Quick changes. But he's going to ride it out a little bit more and hope he can get those deals. That's what he's hoping for.
Again, you seem skeptical.
About what?
You seem skeptical that this is going to work out well because you give the warning of next April. You talk about the stock market. You got cops and firefighters with their 401ks. Working class Americans who are now his constituency have a lot less wiggle room and get a lot more nervous than rich Americans.
Everybody's worried. Everybody's worried.
I have a lot of Trump supporters who are really worried. Guys who were all high-fiving, business guys who were all in on Donald Trump when he won. Now we're going, wait a second, we thought this was a negotiating tactic. We didn't think this was going to happen.
That's on them. That's on them. When Trump tells you that he wants fair deals for America, but he is able, to work stuff out. It doesn't look real good in Ukraine now because Putin is being Putin. But I'm still pretty sure that they'll get a ceasefire because, Trump is saying, look, I'll punish Putin.
So
and he
why?
will. Absolutely will. And now he's not going to say, I'm going to pivot on the tariffs because that would undercut his position with the foreign countries in the negotiation. Not going to say that. But believe me, he knows he's got 12 months. That's pretty much it to make all this economic stuff work.
Okay. Well, 12 months in most senses is a long time economically, politically. It is not very long at all. Would you agree with that?
The market turns fast.
Yeah, that's true.
And Trump, if he gets the Chinese meeting in June, if he gets a ceasefire in Ukraine, if he starts to win, that market will go up fast. There's a lot of cash around.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so now we're going to talk about something that you like talking about, which is you. I believe you once told me that you are the most prolific, see O'Reilly is left speechless, he doesn't have to come back to that, the most prolific best-selling nonfiction author in history. He has Confronting Evil coming out September 13th, I believe, and I did this because of you. I strategically planned my book to come out weeks afterwards, so it would not compete with you. But I'm wondering if you have any advice for me.
Sure. You got a nice Axios, not review, but a nice article setting up the book. Evil comes out September 9th. So what Leland is writing about is that when he was a kid, he was diagnosed with autism and other disadvantages in learning, and then he overcame it through an amazing story. It is, and I've known Vittert since Fox News days. And so the book is about one word, hope. And millions of American kids are now in a circumstance where their parents and grandparents are worried about them because they're not functioning maybe the way that Sally across the street functions. That's all destructive to the kid. You let the kid evolve, because I believe, in your case that's proven out, every human being has talent, innate talent. And that's why I believe in God. Because if there were no God, there'd be some people just walking into trees all day long, okay? That's just the odds. They can't even walk down the street. Every person on this earth no matter what disability they may have, has innate talent. And you can reach the talent and therefore prosper in life. That's what your book's about. It's hope.
Amen.
And that Americans in this day and age need hope, particularly if you have a child that you're worried about.
Yeah. Well, and so many parents do, and I had one who dedicated himself, my father, to me. Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate the endorsement. As always, we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Speaking of books, Democrats are preparing for a series of bad Joe Biden books to drop. How can Democrats turn the Joe Biden disaster into a win? I'm Leland Vittert, and you're listening to America's fastest growing cable news network, NewsNation. News for all America. Things aren't bad enough for Democrats right now. 3 new books are coming out about Joe Biden's failing health and the massive cover-up. Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, is released tomorrow. Here's Amy with one of their findings about how then-President Biden couldn't find his way around even private homes for fundraisers.
Fluorescent tape is very common in larger events to show principals where to go, how to enter a stage. But they planned these lines, fluorescent tapes, throughout fundraisers, even small fundraisers at homes, to kind of guide the president.
Not huge, but illustrative of how Joe Biden couldn't really even go into a fundraiser and hold his own, reporting that at the time he used teleprompters in small fundraisers, couldn't take unscripted questions. Then there's Uncharted, how Trump beat Biden-Harris in the odds in the wildest campaign in history. Chris Whipple publishing April 8th, and Original Sin, President Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice. Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson, May 20th. Those books will expose things the left and their friends in the media called conspiracy theories, all of which, or many of which, later proved to be true.
This is a very sharp president.
He is as sharp as ever.
Intensely probing and detail-oriented and focused.
His mental acuity is great.
They seem fine to me.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
With us now, David Pakman, host of The David Pakman Show, author of the new book, The Echo Machine, How Right-Wing Extremism Created a Post-Truth America. David, welcome, and it's good to see you. I ask this honestly, especially because of the title of your book. And I would agree with you that much of the right of America has a problem with the truth. We talk about it nightly on the show. Do Democrats have a hill to stand on after gaslighting and lying about Joe Biden for 4 years?
Well, you'd have to ask me which Democrats specifically. I'll give you kind of my take as a non-Democrat who said Biden never should have run for re-election to begin with. It seems to me that this is a non-story in the sense of, especially with the books, if you didn't vote Biden in 24, the books aren't going to make a difference. If you did vote Biden in 24, you probably realize that Biden's not coming back and we're going to go in a different direction. And you probably also think it's a good thing that there's going to be a different direction. So I struggle to think of how the books will make any difference.
Forgive me, I think you meant voted Harris in 24.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Didn't know if it was a Freudian slip or if it was actually what you'd meant.
No.
Okay. But to that extent, there's a lot of Democrats who are the same people, right? A lot of the up-and-comers of 2028 were the ones who were defending Biden and who were defending Harris and said the problem with Harris was Joe Biden, not with Kamala Harris. I'm talking about the governor of Michigan. I'm talking about Senator Cory Booker. I'm talking about Chuck Schumer, who you just saw. All of these parts of the apparatus of the Democratic Party, does somebody who I think, as you've pointed out, wants to take on MAGA, do you worry that none of these people have credibility?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that it's become very clear that the path forward is going to be folks that are appealing to voters in a completely different way. I can assure you that if AOC believed in May that at that point Biden being the nominee is just the most logical path forward, I don't think anyone's going to care about that if she continues to fill the arenas that she's filling. I mean, I'm not trying to be sort of coy, but the point I'm making is when there's a choice in 2028 and it's whoever with the endorsement of Bernie and AOC and whoever else, I don't think anywhere in the calculus is going to be what did this person say about Biden in 2024. Just nobody thinks that way.
I think you're right. The books are sort of interesting Washington theater. I don't think anybody at home cares because they don't trust anybody in Washington, including most of the media. If we look forward now, Gavin Newsom over the weekend on Bill Maher. Take a listen.
The Democratic brand is toxic right now. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be.
Including him. You say that it doesn't matter what people said about Joe Biden. Does it matter what Gavin Newsom himself said about things and forced down people's throats and now seems to want to change his stripes?
Well, I think that this is just a calculation. And the question is that apparent changing of stripes going to bring more new people that would say I'd consider voting for Newsom himself if he runs in 2028, for example? Is this new Newsom going to bring in more people than he's going to dissuade? I don't have the answer right now. I think, having watched a bunch of these episodes of the podcast, having heard from people who think this is absolutely fantastic, he's reaching out to moderates, he's going to get away from the perception that he's too far left. Some people gave me that feedback. Others said, what on earth is he doing? He's having Charlie Kirk on and they're throwing bouquets at each other. This doesn't make any sense. And so I don't know where it's going to fall, but it's certainly a play. It's a calculation.
Yeah. I'm going to get you to your book because I think there's an interesting parallel here. You've got Cory Booker, who is a senator from New Jersey, briefly ran for president back in 2020, didn't work out so well. He is now up on the floor of the United States Senate behind me in a filibuster of some sort going on and complaining and says he's going to stand there as long as he's physically able and read the telephone book or whatever. Just so people like us talk about him and he tries to become relevant again. If what you say in the book is true, that Republicans have created a post-truth world, and I think Democrats went right along with it. So I blame both sides. We do that here on the show. What then does a Democrat have to do to earn the trust of the American people?
Well, I think the clearest explanation of how this alternative Republican Party has nothing for you is sort of number one. But I don't believe in just pointing out the flaws of the other side to try to win. I think it needs to be demonstrated. Listen, they made all these promises. Elon Musk came in, got government contracts, claimed to cut stuff he didn't really cut. Okay, make the point that they've got nothing to offer you. But then you need to have some kind of credible way of explaining what you want to do. And I was critical of when Kamala Harris came in and said, well, if you start a business, the initial expenses will be deductible, or was it a credit? Was it refundable or a non-refundable credit? That was a disaster, right? So there needs to be some top line healthcare, education, economy, jobs, whatever the 3 to 5 things are, and it's got to be super clear what you're voting for. I think that was missing in 24.
David, you are a remarkably thoughtful and sanguine, calm thinker, clear orator. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Welcome back anytime. Congratulations on the book. It's hard work.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be with you as well. We're 71 days into Donald Trump's presidency, and we'll finally get the first actual report card from voters, real voters. There are 3 special elections tomorrow, 2 House seats in Florida that are much closer than Republicans want. They should be safe Republican seats. Nah, maybe not. Then there is the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Elon Musk is giving out $1 million checks at rallies to counter money pouring into the state from Democrats around the country. Elon Musk spent the weekend in Wisconsin. It's cold there. The race decides who controls Wisconsin Supreme Court, and more. Here is Musk describing the stakes.
The Democrats are trying to redraw the districts in Wisconsin We're trying to stop the Democrats from gerrymandering Wisconsin to remove 2 House seats. We could lose control of the House, and all of the government reforms could be shut down.
That might be something that both the left and the right agree about. It's the most expensive judiciary race in U.S. history, $90 million funneling to see which party controls Wisconsin's Supreme Court.
Wisconsin's a big state politically, and the Supreme Court has a lot to do with elections in Wisconsin. So if whoever it is that's running, including, even Senate races, et cetera, but whoever it is in 4 years that runs, having Wisconsin is a very big, we won it early and big.
Scott Tranter, Director of Data Science, Decision Desk HQ, is with us now. The media at all, partly because it's important to have a story in a time and a little bit of excitement.
checks. That's newsmaking,
right? They're framing this as a referendum on Trump. Is that fair?
No, I think it's better to frame it as this is the opening salvo of 2026, because as that clip showed, look, who controls the Supreme Court is going to have impact on some of the congressional lines in Wisconsin, and with the thin margin and a potential flip here, the margin of the House could be a few seats, and it starts there. They want to make it about Donald Trump because of Elon Musk and all the other things, but this is really more about House control in 2026 from my point of view.
All right, Wisconsin Supreme Court polling, Trafalgar Group, which was very accurate in 2024. Susan Crawford, the Democrat, 51. Brad Schmiel, the Republican, 49. Wisconsin went for Donald Trump and Elon Musk, if you want to call it that. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are all spending a lot of time and breath trying to organize and recruit. Why are they losing?
Well, and to point out that poll, not only is Trafalgar a pretty good pollster, but they're considered a right-leaning pollster, and so they've got the Democrat ahead. Look, the way Wisconsin is done, and they do a lot of these judgeship races, these off-year races. Back before I did all this, I used to be involved with them. The Democrats are very good at turning their people out in these highly motivated races like this. The early vote, which isn't as prevalent in Wisconsin as it is in Florida, indicates that Democrats are there. And then, again, a lot of public polling, like the Trafalgar one, shows the Democrat a little bit ahead.
Okay. You think about the insane amount of money spent on this, I guess, idealistically, in the sense of, hoping that judgeships in the Supreme Court should be nonpartisan, not just voting for a Republican or a Democrat. I guess that's what we've gotten to. Is it fair to say, though, that in Wisconsin, most people are not voting for this woman or that guy? They are voting either red or blue.
Exactly. It's red or blue. It's very partisanship. Look, Brad Schmiel, former GOP lawyer, he's a long-time mainstay in the GOP party, very popular in Wisconsin. Same thing with Crawford. I would imagine most voters who are going to vote tomorrow, they have a vague idea who these people are, but more importantly, they're voting for their party.
They're voting for their party, so then it becomes a turnout issue. Mm-hmm. And we found that Donald Trump is great at getting people, low-propensity voters, I'll use one of your terms, to turn out for him. Not for everybody else.
And you're great tee up for Florida 6. It's very good for him, not for everyone else, and that's why Randy Fine might not be sleeping well tonight.
Okay, so we move to Florida. You say Florida 6. This is the congressional districts in Florida. This is Mike Waltz's old district. He is now the national security advisor, and within 4 points in a district that Donald Trump won by 30 points.
Yeah, look, Randy Fine, if I'm a betting person, and you and I like to talk about this a lot, I'd bet Randy Fine wins. But that's not the betting line. Does Randy Fine win by more or less than 10 in a district that Donald Trump by more than 20?
How do we account for that?
So Florida's great. They have a lot of early vote. They're very good at counting these things. And basically what we can tell is if all the Republicans who returned a ballot vote for Randy Fine and all the Democrats who returned a ballot vote for Randy Fine and the independents split 50-50, Randy Fine would only be about 9 points ahead. Now, I don't think that's how it's going to break. I think the independents, based on the polling we have, are going to break towards the Democrat. So that's why we look at this race as very close. Randy Fine's favored. I want to be Randy Fine tonight, but he's going to have a lot of questions.
What does it tell us that it's this close?
Just the amount of ballots that are returned.
No, what does it tell us about the politics?
Oh, it tells us about the politics. It tells us that the Republican brand in that district is not as strong as when Donald Trump won 6 months ago.
And that's not far from the district. May actually be the district he landed in to go to the Daytona 500.
That's exactly right.
All right. Good to see you, Scott.
Thank you.
As always, thank you. I don't like talking about myself, but I will. I'm a TV anchor. It kind of comes naturally. My new book, Born Lucky, comes out this fall. How I, with the help of my incredible father, refused to be diagnosed or refused to be defined by an autism diagnosis.
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
We promised you a big announcement today, and here it goes. We heard from a lot of you after my Father's Day essay last year. I titled it Born Lucky. It was the story of growing up with what we now know as autism. About 15 million kids, roughly 20%, have a diagnosis right now of a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder, and Lord knows, parts of the other 80% deal with constant problems from bullying and self-esteem to making friends and academics in school. The essay was a very small part of a larger story. That story comes out September 30th in my new book, Born Lucky. I'm writing Born Lucky to give those 15 million kids and their parents hope. You can pre-order the book right now at bornluckybook.com. I am living proof you don't have to be defined by your diagnosis. As a little boy, child psychologist told my parents I have the condition that we now know as autism. I always will. My middle school principal told my parents I was, quote, weird. They were both right. I didn't talk until I was 3. Among many problems that led to bullying, of course, I had no friends, and teachers got in on the fun too. In 8th grade, the art teacher said in front of the entire class that if his dog was as ugly as me, he would shave its ass and make it walk backwards. I still remember the quote to this day. Everybody laughed. My dad made me go to art class the next day with the same teacher. And that's what this story is about, my dad. Dad refused to allow psychologists to diagnose me with anything. He knew the world wouldn't change for me, so he had to change me for the world. This is that story. He sold his company, stopped his career, and dedicated the next 18 years of his life to helping me. Dad decided push-ups would whip my 7-year-old body into shape that no schoolyard bully would dare mess with. And soon he had me doing 200 a day. Unable to read social cues, he would take me to dinner. And when I became too loud or off rhythm with his friends or adults at the table, he would casually just tap his watch. That was my signal to stop talking. And later we would pregame, postgame, what I had missed. My diagnosis as having an IQ spread from genius on half of the test to mentally retarded on others would have gotten me significant special treatment. And that was quite in vogue during the late 80s and 90s. Dad knew a cruel world after high school would not make such accommodations, and he was right. He became my best friend for a long time. He was my only friend, my protector, cheerleader, and harshest critic. Those lessons took me from a kid who could barely talk and didn't understand basic social interaction to the White House North Lawn, the battlefields of the Middle East, and now the anchor desk of 2 networks. This is the love story of a father who sacrificed everything, gave so much, he doesn't like the word sacrifice, to help his son. And how with a lot of love, hard work, and unyielding standards, you, anybody, doesn't have to be defined by a diagnosis. Nobody does. And I know what you're thinking right now, if you've stayed tuned in this long. The world doesn't need a TV journalist of all people lecturing parents about how to fix their autistic kids. And you're right. But that's not what this is about. This is about giving hope to tens of millions of parents whose kids are struggling every day. Not just with autism, but ADHD, learning disabilities, anxiety, bullying, and the difficulties of growing up. It's hard. Your kid, your grandkid, doesn't have to be defined by the diagnosis. Life in the real world doesn't give participation trophies, and the experts aren't always right. I've never talked about this before with anybody, but it's time to say thank you to my dad. The book comes out September 30th, and I would be honored if you'd come on this journey with me. You can pre-order the book at bornluckybook.com. First wrote about this, it all came alive in War Notes. That's our free newsletter. It comes out every day at 7 p.m. You can subscribe for free at warnotes.com. And if you've forgotten all of the addresses and websites and everything else, just remember on social media, Instagram and Twitter, at Leland Vittert. Next up, Trump says he's pissed at Vladimir Putin for not agreeing to a ceasefire, and Putin announcing he's drafting 160,000 new soldiers into the Russian army. Why Trump's promise for a quick ceasefire in Ukraine is farther away than ever. We've built On Balance for viewers who look at the world not left and right, but right and wrong. Dealing with the issues that matter to Americans, not the issues that matter to Washington. Is there less of a stigma to not going to college and going into the trades? We give all sides their best argument and then challenge them. Why wouldn't it be better for you guys to do it? That's real journalism.
On Balance with Leland Vittert, weeknights at 9/8 Central, only on NewsNation.
Faces dueling crises overseas right now that are threatening, both of them are threatening, to define his presidency, perhaps not in a good way. Trump came to office promising quick resolutions with Iran and Russia, but the Ayatollah and Vladimir Putin are not cooperating. Iran says they might strike U.S. B-2 bombers in the Indian Ocean. The Telegraph newspaper reports Iranian military leaders saying commanders have been instructed to ensure that all missile launches are prepared and that nuclear sites in their country are well protected. They are bracing for an all-out war with everything in place for when Trump attacks. The B-2 bombers are at Diego Garcia, an island in the Indian Ocean. The planes moved there over the weekend to provide Trump with a preemptive option if negotiations with Iran break down, something President Trump warned NBC's Kristen Welker would have terrible consequences.
On Iran, the president said he's also considering secondary tariffs if Iran doesn't agree to a nuclear deal. Quote, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing, and it will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before.
To be fair, that's not much different than what Trump said about Vladimir Putin. Maybe not the bombing part, but the consequences part. Because Putin keeps defying Trump and denying Trump his ceasefire in Ukraine.
I want to make sure that he follows through, and I think he will. I don't want to go secondary tariffs on his oil, but I think, it's something I would do if I thought he wasn't doing the job.
With us now, Senior Fellow and Director of Research in Foreign Policy, the Philip H. Knight Chair in Defense and Strategy for the Brookings Institute, Michael O'Hanlon. Michael, good to see you as always. Is this what people were, I don't want to say worried about, but warned about, that Vladimir Putin was just going to keep playing this out?
Absolutely, my friend. And I think that President Trump is realizing that in this last iteration, if he hadn't before. And I'm very encouraged to see it. I didn't expect, in fact, I knew that it was impossible that President Trump could solve this war in 24 hours. I'm not sure many of President Trump's supporters really took that literally. But the point is, this is moving pretty fast. And much of the dialogue the last 2 months has been at the expense of Ukraine and President Zelensky. That has often not been fair. Although I do think President Trump was right to recognize he needed leverage on both sides. But it seemed like he only wanted leverage on Zelensky, who's the victim of this aggression, not the perpetrator. Now, President Trump is coming to the conclusion, it appears, that Vladimir Putin is playing for time, feels like he has momentum, and feels like maybe he can outweigh Trump and Zelensky. And so I'm glad to see the American president starting to show an ability to be critical of both sides. I have no idea where this goes next. But where we are this week, after the weekend news shows, is a better place than where we've been for a while.
Zelensky, former KGB, arguably a sociopath, escalate to de-escalate. Is he telegraphing right now to the United States that he doesn't mind embarrassing Donald Trump?
Well, of course, that's about Putin, not Zelensky. Zelensky is the former comedian who's
pardon me, God.
No,
I've been at this too long. Yes. Zelensky, Ukraine. Pardon me. Go ahead.
But I also knew you'd want us both to be clear that, as you say, Putin is a former KGB. And who knows what else makes up his psychology. And I don't think he would play Trump just for the pleasure of doing that. I think he does have a certain affection for Trump, but I think he has a much greater affection for himself and for his idea of a greater Russia. And he would like to follow in the footsteps of Peter the Great and Catherine the Great, the leaders of the 18th century in Russia who expanded its territory. And he'd like to be Vladimir the Great. And he's willing to lose hundreds of thousands of Russian lives and Ukrainian lives in order to pursue that vision. And I don't think he really cares whether he's being friendly to Donald Trump or not along the way.
Thank you for correcting my Joe Biden moment. We all made fun of him when he did that. So I guess I deserve it as well. One of Vladimir Putin's stooges was on CNN talking about Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Trump, in my opinion, is something very special. It is not just a charismatic leader, but he represents a kind of ideology that changes the balance of the power in the world. These new conditions, I think Putin's Russia and Putin personally stops to be the main enemy, the main evil guy, bad guy.
Are the Russians overplaying their hand?
They could be. Although it was interesting, as Trump was coming into office for the second time, the Russians did not sound euphoric. I think they knew that they were in for a little bit of a challenge because Trump had promised peace within 24 hours, and Putin knew that he wanted to play for time. And it was going to be inconvenient to square those two things. So, I think the Russians are aware at some level that they don't really have a big friend in the White House, and they're not going to base Russian policy on a Putin-Trump friendship anyway. So, yeah, they're overplaying their hand maybe a little bit, but I also think they're aware that the United States and Russia have different interests, and it's not just about Biden versus Trump.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Michael, we find more agreement every time we talk. It's great having you on the program. Thank you very much. One thing you'll be talking about tomorrow. You will be talking about this tomorrow when we come back.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the go. I'm senior national correspondent Brian Entin. We're here for you 24/7 on the News Nation app or on your Alexa. Just say, play News Nation.
Just a quick public service announcement. Remember that when you wake up tomorrow is April Fool's Day. Be careful out there. The world is a jungle. Everything Ashley Banfield's going to tell you is true. Just be careful in the morning. That does it for tonight. Here's Ashley.